So, this is the Joe Rogan-esque part of my YouTube channel and vlog that I knew would eventually make an appearance. And um, so I'm kind of at least 2/3 done with this Lake 22 hike. And yes, I've had an edible, and I am just kind of putzing down this mountain and admiring the scenery and looking at the trees. Like there's some really big papas over there, and just kind of thinking about like the history of humanity and why we live the way that we do. Basically just what got us here to the point where we're at now, and kind of slaving away and living for the weekend, and all of the stress and bullshit that we put on ourselves as Americans and as humans. And you look back at just like the history of humans and how it's kind of gone, and ever since the very beginning of the dawn of humanity, there's been at the beginning it was nomadic tribal people, or even before tribes, individuals, which turned into tribes, and eventually turned into things that looked like civilization, like a village and a city, and eventually bigger cities and kingdoms, and now what we know as nations, right? So, but no matter how big or small any of those things ever were, humans and groups of humans have always been at war with each other. And the wars were always relatively, and always have been, over who gets to control things. Basically, who gets to call the shots. So, I think Americans especially, we have really short memories. We like to think that the world was founded in 1776 and everything before that is just a distant memory, and we don't think about it. We really don't like to think about it. But the reality is that America's really young. Humans and groups of people and family names have been warring with each other to decide who's going to run shit for a really long time. So I'm just going to give you a view of something other than me while I rant. So, all that eventually leads to people who actually did run shit for a long time, kings, and who took over huge empires. But as we know, people don't like to be told to serve, told to like bow down to a king that they didn't choose, right? So all these different kingdoms were finding that their people that were supposed to be part of their kingdom a lot of times started their own little uprisings because they didn't like being told, hey, I didn't choose you, I didn't get to pick, so what makes you my king? Why should I bow down to you? And this is the part that Americans just really don't have a history of, because America was founded after this had already been figured out. The kings eventually learned, instead of taking over vast quantities of wealth and land and whatever else their empire sought, and then telling everybody to bow down and kiss the ring, that they could actually make us believe that they chose us through what we now know as democracy, or in our case, a constitutional republic. So as we're coming up on another election year, just don't forget, this whole system. If Donald Trump was right about anything, he was right about this. The system is rigged. Those kings from old are still in charge. Their family names, their dynasties have lived on for centuries. And they're inherently evil because you have to do evil shit to get to the point where they've been, the point that they've gotten to. They just learned to eventually get to a point where they make you feel like you chose your ruler. So you feel like you elected Donald Trump, or we feel like we elected Barack Obama, or we elected George Bush. And we kind of did. But they were all rigged. I mean, let's be honest. They were put there. Anybody that's ever rose up and fought the actual system that's in place, like your Bernie Sanders, sort of, and your Ron Pauls, JFK wanted to audit the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is what funnels all that money to the real kings, folks. That guy got killed, The real families are still running things behind the scenes. Our little tiny elections that we think are so important, I mean, they don't do much. Realistically, let's look at it. They make little differences in our lives, and let's be honest, we're Americans. We've been living pretty cush for a long time, so we think to ourselves, oh, this is all right. This is better than, 300 years ago when another country might invade us and take my land and kill my family. Good arguments. Those are good arguments. Maybe it is better than that. But it's not as good as it could be. That's exactly what they want you to feel like. They want you to feel like this is good. This is as good as it's ever been. America, freedom, capitalism, it's all working. And some of it is. Some of it really, truly is. Some of it, I do think that this society that we've built, or that they've built, is maybe the best system that humanity has ever known. But it could be better, though. Here's another waterfall. It's like one of those things that, how much do you want to complain about it? Because we really do lead pretty cushy lives. But in order for us to lead those cushy lives, how many other people have to suffer? And that's, to me, that's become a legitimate concern. How many other people are, getting treaded on as part of this kingdom that we're still serving, realistically. So at this point, you're probably like, dude, either, we already know this. I think a lot of people do, even if they don't yet acknowledge it. The system's rigged. Trump hasn't done a lot of the things that he said he's done. He's not going to, because he still serves a king. He still has a leash. He's still answering to somebody. It's just all behind the scenes. So he's done some things. Some things have benefited me. Not all of them. He's not. None of them are big. Nothing is big because the system is well in place to keep doing what it's already doing. So at this point, you're asking me, what if you are just now starting to realize what this is, then you might be thinking to yourself, what do we do about it? And that's a good question too. That's something that I still struggle with regularly. And I think it's kind of up to every individual person what you do in your life to make this system feel okay to you. The thing is, a lot of people, it already does feel okay. The constant wars and oppression, the 40-some% tax rate, the insane laws that get passed and oppressed on the people, the terrorist attacks, all of this is like, it's still okay, to some people. We'll just deal with that. It's not okay to me, though. I see that things could be better. I acknowledge they're not as good as they can be, and that's because we still have some evil pricks in charge of things. And so again, I'm coming back to this question. What do you do? Well, you got to step off the rat wheel. So again, it's up to every individual person, I feel like, to decide how do you make a difference in your own life. And I did that. I can tell you what I did to kind of minimize my role in that, in all of that system. And you guys can do what you do. But what I did was I started with a total mentality change, which comes back to minimalism. The idea that I don't need to prove myself to anybody. I don't need to keep acquiring more shit to make you guys all think I'm dope. And I was living that lifestyle for a long time. I was deeply in debt. I wasn't happy. I wasn't doing any of the cool stuff that I'm doing now. I was just slaving away, paying bills, and that's what many people are doing. But you don't have to be, we're all going to have bills. You can't just immediately step off. I've got bills, but, the biggest thing is you don't have to buy stuff that you don't need. You don't have to get a better car every time you pay down a little bit of debt on the first one. Every time you got a little equity with the bank, you don't need to go loan more. That's how a lot of Americans live. And being in the insurance industry, I learned a scary statistic to me is that the vast majority of Americans have less than a couple $1,000s in savings. That's terrifying because there's just no way that that's going to get you to a point where you get to retire. That should scare you. If it doesn't, you're not going to get to experience life, what life is. You're going to be paying off the man the whole time. And the system is trained to get you in that position. And I was in that position as much as anybody. I was completely debt strapped with my house and numerous cars and a bunch of stuff that ultimately nobody cares about. Because now I get to do whatever I want. Almost whatever I want. And that's freedom. So what did I do? I made a commitment to myself to not take out any more debt. No more loans. I've paid off all of my loans except for my house. And, that's a top priority for me. Once my house is paid off, there's no more loans in my life. I'll live in a cardboard box if I have to before I sign myself back up for that whole thing. And, I save money, I stash money, and I'm a lot more conscientious of where I spend my money. The places that I do do I really need this? Is it really going to improve my life? Or when it comes to travel, sometimes I have to really justify some of these purchases, like even a GoPro, which I'm using to film this thing. I had to do a lot to justify it to myself to buy something like that, even though it's done so much to, take this vlog and let me communicate and get some of this message, some of my, life message out. So just buy less stuff. Be careful about what you buy. Be careful about what companies you support. Research. Look at where stuff goes. All of those things. Just owning less stuff. Owning smaller things. Smaller houses. Cheaper cars. All of these things that keep you more financially happy. All those things keep you off the rat wheel. You want to be able to have the freedom to give your boss the middle finger when you get to that point. Because so many people are in that point. I've been at that point. You want to have the freedom to be able to do that. And it's just really, so all of those things kind of lead back to your individual freedom that everybody should enjoy, but so many people aren't. I can't figure out why. And I think they also all lead to being healthier in other ways. Like, I eat a lot healthier and, generally just eat better stuff. All of those things eventually kind of get you off that rat wheel that we've been sold on, and get you to a point where you are more content with not being judged, living your life however you want to, not being in debt, not having to just slave away trying to pay bills and pay off your debt and all that stuff. All of that money, all that interest funnels its way up to the kings of old. Those same people, those lineages and those families that have been conquering, killing, and destroying for hundreds of years, they're still in charge. Donald Trump's not in charge of anything. Barack Obama wasn't in charge of anything. Not anything meaningful. They still answer to all the same people that they always did. So there's no way we can do anything by force. We have to do things in little ways. Like the things that you can impact right in your direct life. How do you get off that rat wheel? Take control of these things. Don't answer to anybody. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you feel like you have to move forward in your career. But I'll tell you something. Humans respect other humans who form boundaries and have confidence and create their own freedom. Give yourself the power to get yourself in that position. And I think I've talked enough. I've probably offended somebody by now, so I'm going to go ahead and just shut this off. This is about the end of this trail anyways. I'm coming down to some of the waterfalls that I started in, and we'll see if I even post this.